And to this young man who introduced me, thank you so very much. You did a good job. I mean, that was a lot to read, right? All that stuff, right? Just all that stuff. If I could tell you anything really about myself, just know that I love God, I love my family, and I love people. So that really is what my bio should really say, because that's what really matters. I'm grateful to him as well because he's back there recording. I heard some people say that there will be students here and you're going to maybe have to write something, you know, based off of this experience. And then we have this great young man in the front, he's recording, I hear Facebook Live. And so I just appreciate that, okay? Because I don't know how long I have to be on this earth and I never know when it's my last time. And when you are able to contribute to humanity in such a way, sometimes it's good to record it, take a picture, because everything that you contribute that's positive, it matters. So thank you again. So on this afternoon, I'm going to talk about living the dream, facing the challenge. Living the dream, facing the challenge. We're going to focus on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to focus on him as the young man that he was, right? Because he actually wasn't assassinated until he was, he was only 39 years old. So we're going to focus in on his contributions, his life in a real way. When we think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., know that he was born January 15, 1929, and he was assassinated April 4, 1968. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia. This man, Michael King, later known as Martin Luther King Jr., was born on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia. So this is what we're going to focus on, living the dream, facing the challenge. Now, as I'm journeying through this presentation and we're going along together, I want you to think today about perception. Perception. Think about perception. Now, when we think about the word perception, to perceive a thing, it is based off of what we see, based off of what we hear, you know, our senses, even in this moment about what you feel. So I want you to think about perception as we journey through this together. So experience this presentation with your senses. I'm giving you permission on this afternoon to be human. So many times, you know, be strong, right? You can handle it, be strong. Don't cry, right? Even as a youth pastor, I've been to many funerals, and that's some of the things that people say, oh, don't cry, be strong. Well, in this presentation, I want you to be honest about what you feel and how you feel, and know that it's okay to be human. So when thinking about perception, when you look at this image, I want you to think about what you see. What you see. What do you see? Now, everyone in here is different, so you're going to see different things. And I saw a hand, and I'm so glad. Let me say this. If you have something to say, raise your hand and let your voice be heard, okay? Even in the moment, it won't be rude, right? So yes, what is it that you see?
A spear.
Ah, a spear. Yes, what do you see? Two faces. Those are great answers because, hey, you either see a dagger or a spear, or you see faces, or you see both. Maybe you didn't see both, so let me give you a little more time. Wow, so everyone in here is able to express their interpretation of this image, right? That's a good thing. So look at you. You're using your perception, what you see. What about this image? Again, everyone here is different, and it's okay to be honest about what you see and to express your interpretation. So, some of us in here will see patriotism, because we're all different. Some of us will see confusion. Someone in here might see American history. Someone else may see hate. And then there are some among us who may see protests, and then others may see freedom of speech. So because we all have our own ways of thinking, we perceive, or we see, we experience this image in our own way as well. Now, why do you think that this image may be a little more difficult to speak aloud about. I wonder if this has something to do with it. When we saw the dagger and the faces, you know, we say, oh, that's what I see. But I wonder if this image is a little more challenging, even to speak up in front of other people, because of this simple thing, right? Some people will say, oh, it's not that simple. It's a little more complex than that. Then others will say, you know, it's not a big deal. And then there are others who are hurt by this particular image. Well, you know, there's one of these flags on I-95. If you're driving from Fayetteville to Raleigh, oh, it waves in the wind. So this picture is in black and white, but if you see that flag, even in 2020, it's bright and vivid on I-95. So whatever it is that this image or this gathering represents for you, I want you to be honest about that, because oftentimes we're in spaces where we don't get to be free about what we feel, how we interpret a thing. So which one of those things, how do you interpret? Well, I want you to consider Dr. King. Dr. King lived in a time where these type of images were very popular, you know, pretty vivid, you know, it was commonplace. And so when he saw this image, he would have interpreted it in a certain way as well. He would have interpreted it probably in a way that included his faith. You see, because at age 19, King was ordained and appointed as an assistant pastor early in life at this church called Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Well, then by the time he was 25, he actually became a pastor of a church called Dexter Avenue Church in Montgomery, Alabama. So, because of his faith, he would have interpreted certain images in a certain way. You see, because what would have happened with King is that much of his interpretation and convictions would have been guided by the faith in a loving God. You see, this book here, called the Holy Bible, would have influenced the way that he interpreted what he saw. Because he chose to be a Baptist preacher, he would have opened this book and he would have found that God, this loving God, when he read this book, King would have discovered that God used ordinary people, fishermen, prostitutes, uneducated people, the rejected, and the oppressed. So when he opened this book and he saw such images, he would have interpreted that, wait a minute, I believe that God would want us all to acknowledge that we're more the same than we are different, or at least we should learn how to love one another. That's in this book. He would have looked in this book and maybe even turned to Acts chapter 10, verses 34 and 35, and he would have discovered that Peter began to speak. And in that portion of scripture, Peter said, I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism. That would have influenced King, even at 19 years old. God accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right. King would have realized that to be authentically Christian would have meant loving people. King would have realized that to be authentically Christian would mean to follow in the way of this man called Jesus Christ. To be authentically Christian would mean to follow a kinky-haired Palestinian with bronze feet. He would have read Revelation chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. He would have read about Jesus. And he would have read this and he would have identified this town called Nazareth in Galilee. That's where this Jesus came from. And so when King would stand to deliver a sermon, either at Dexter Avenue, this is Dexter Avenue, or even at Ebenezer Baptist Church, he would have stood and preached to people no matter where they came from, no matter what they had done, no matter the color of their skin. He would have stood and asked, do you really know the man from Galilee? Do you really know this Jesus? Because to know this Jesus means that, you know, once you come into the knowledge of this loving God, your heart would be changed. Do you really know the man from Galilee? And see, it was a Baptist church. You see, it may have been a real nice one like this. I've never been to either one of these. I wasn't alive when King was. But they may have had these types of floors. And you see, in the Baptist church, whenever King would have asked, do you know the man from Galilee? One of the church mothers, she may have been in the back and she may have been feeling a song in her heart. And see, in the Baptist church, they might stump their foot like this. And the old mother in the back in that Baptist church, when she raised the question that King raised, she was singing like this. Do you know the man? Do you know the man? Do you know the man from Galilee? And then she tell you about it. Well, he walked out on the water. He calmed the raging seas. Do you know the man from Galilee? Those are the Baptist churches. Somebody would testify and say, yes, I know the man. Because he changed my heart. Yes, I know the man, Jesus. Yes, I know the man from Galilee. Well, he walked out on the water. He calmed the raging seas. Oh, do you know the man from Galilee? Because King knew that it's hard to be a Christian and have hate in your heart. How are you a Christian and have hostility toward your fellow man? How can you be a Christian and be that way? He would have been concerned. Do you really know the man from Galilee? So his faith would have influenced his interpretation. But not only was Dr. King a man of faith, but Dr. King was an educated man. Now, for the students in here, you need to understand that at age 15, Dr. King passed an entrance exam. You see, many people were going off to war, and they needed some students. He entered Morehouse College, and by the time he was 19, he graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in sociology. Students, what more can you do? Understand, I know, even when I was in grade school, I always saw Dr. King as an old man. I didn't really realize that he was only 39, but then you know how it is when you're really, really young. 39 even seems old. But let me tell you something, that's not old. Then, in May 1951, he graduated with his degree, seminary. He went to seminary and graduated. Valedictorian he was. He spoke with his head up, ready to face the world. And then by June 1955, he earned his doctoral degree in systematic theology from Boston University. He was 26 years old. So for the students in here, never doubt what you can do right now. It doesn't matter how old you are. And for the older people in here, stop saying that you're so old and it's time for you to just sit on down somewhere. No! You're still breathing. So you still have an assignment. So no matter what your age is, you should be inspired by this man who worked while it was day. And if you're breathing, it's still day in your life. Stop living like it's nighttime. And so he was an educated man, and so that which he saw would have been influenced. And then King faced arrest. You know, many times we see images of King, you know, perhaps in a church, and we see him marching and things like that. Well, this is King when he was arrested in Alabama. King wasn't the only one arrested, though. And he wasn't arrested just one or two times. These are only 3 occasions where he was arrested. But in 1960, 52 individuals, including King, were arrested in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. They refused to leave their seats in a segregated department store lunch counter. They sat there, and so they were arrested. You see, during King's time, there was something called Jim Crow laws. And so these laws were in place to segregate people. Now, I'm going to use terms like white. I'm going to use terms black. I'm going to use probably not African American. I probably won't bring any hyphenated Americans into the chapel on this afternoon. So you will find me not saying that. And whenever I do say black and white, I'm not discounting everyone else. Asians, and I mean everyone. So this is inclusive, especially in the sense that I won't even use a hyphenated American term. So Jim Crow laws meant that black people could not use certain bathrooms and ticket booths and water fountains and other public spaces. This is what they dealt with. And so kicking against that, King found himself in shackles. Even in 1963, he was arrested and sent to jail because he and others protested the treatment of blacks in Birmingham. There was a court order that they weren't supposed to do such things, but they did it anyway, and that's when he found himself writing this letter from Birmingham jail. If you've never read it, that's your homework assignment. If you have read it, that's your homework assignment. Read it and just see. Put yourself in the moment. Remember, it's all about perception. What would it feel like if you were there? Then he was arrested again. I have one more where he was jailed after he attempted to eat in a restaurant in 1964 in Florida. So, the arrest, King dealt with that. And so, because of all of the things that he faced, Jim Crow laws and all of these things that he saw black people face, he said these words: "Due to my involvement in the struggle for the freedom of my people, I have known very few quiet days in the last few years. I have been arrested 5 times and put in Alabama jails. My home has been bombed twice. A day seldom passes that my family and I are not recipients of threats of death. I have been the victim of a near-fatal stabbing. So in a real sense, I have been battered by the storms of persecution. I must admit that at times I have felt that I could no longer bear such a heavy burden and have been tempted to retreat to a more quiet and serene life. But every time such temptation appeared, something came to strengthen and sustain my determination. I have learned now that the master's burden is light precisely when we take his yoke upon us." So then it rang out as king, as a young man, even in chains. When those shackles were taken off of his wrists, then was the time. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom land. Dr. Martin Luther King found himself leading many causes, even as a young man, as a Baptist minister and a social activist. He led the civil rights movement from the mid-1950s until his assassination in 1968. His leadership was fundamental to the movement's success in ending the legal segregation of blacks in the South and in other parts of the country. King rose to national prominence as head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which promoted non-violent tactics. Even the massive March on Washington in 1963. And so, Dr. King has so many quotes that people use. Post them on social media. Not always really stopping to think about what they really say, or perhaps what they really mean to you as an individual. I've talked about groups. Now it's time to focus on what you think as an individual. It's okay to have your individual thoughts. We just have to be so very sure that our thoughts are thoughts that are wrapped in love, Because when they're not wrapped in love, your thoughts become actions. And your actions can oppress if your thoughts are not right. And if your thoughts are not right, your actions are moved in a negative direction, and then your heart is tainted. And to have a tainted heart, so then what is something that Dr. King, a quote that he's left with us? Well, Dr. King said that we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. And unfortunately, some of our ancestors died as fools. That is a fact. Because why? They did not learn to live together as brothers and sisters, so they died as fools. And yes, it's not nice to say anything negative about the dead. But don't post the quote if you don't believe that some folks actually died as fools. So then the question is, when you die, will they not say it, but they know it? Here lies a fool. You get to choose your legacy. So if we don't learn to live together as brothers, we will perish together as fools. There's still togetherness to be had. We can live together in brotherhood and sisterhood and love, or we can just go on and die and be fools. He also said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. What matters to you? What things actually matter? I'm not talking about the things that only benefit you. I mean, is there anything else that matters outside of you? Do other people matter? When they are oppressed? When they feel bad? Or is there a narcissistic spirit that exists within you to the point where the only thing that you speak about is the thing that benefits you? Well, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter, but we have to decide, even on today, what matters. What actually matters? I mean, when we see an image like this from 1963, does it even matter? I mean, this is 2020. I mean, come on. And a dog is man's best friend. How dare you? I mean, and this was so long ago. Our lives begin to end when we become silent on things that matter. Collective trauma matters. Now, my PhD is in human services, and my undergraduate degree, I have a sociology degree, so I've took a lot of time just kind of studying human behavior and social groups, how we interact with one another, and how we interact really with ourselves, how you deal with you. And there is something indeed called a collective trauma. A collective trauma has to do with traumatic psychological effects that's shared by a group of people. And it can be up to and including an entire society. There are well-known collective traumas that include the Holocaust, right? That's a collective trauma. The Armenian genocide, that's a collective trauma. Slavery in the United States. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima. The Trail of Tears. The September 11th, 2001, the bombings or the attacks, even in the United States. And so then there's a post-traumatic stress disorder that can follow these experiences. You probably heard of PTSD, right? Many times we're familiar with it when it comes to military, our service workers. PTSD. But PTSD, when the American Psychiatric Association describes PTSD, they say that it is a response to being exposed to an event that threatens oneself or others with death or serious injury. That's what post-traumatic stress disorder is defined as. So it involves helplessness, it involves fear, and it involves horror. So, when we consider what happened in 1963, you see, this was in Birmingham, and the conflict there reached its peak when high-pressure fire hoses forced demonstrators from the business district there. And so then Bull Collar, he called out for dogs and water hoses and cattle prods to disperse 4,000 demonstrators in downtown Birmingham. Now I want you to think, 1963, this is 2020. 1963 was not that long ago. Some of you in here know people from the 1960s and 1970s, right? These people are still walking around. What do you think this traumatic event did to this white police officer? What do you think this event did to this black man? And I know we believe all dogs go to heaven, so I won't say anything about a dog. There was a little joke there, trying to lighten the mood. But really, when it affects one of us, it affects all of us. Dr. King said, we all came here on different ships, but we're all in the same boat at the end of the day. So social anguish is something that Dr. King knew black folks dealt with in America. So I was having a conversation with a woman. Her name is Mrs. Hicks. She's in her 70s. I was talking to her about this presentation because I wanted to hear what she had to say. I wasn't here. I wasn't there. I didn't march with anybody. I wasn't even born. So then that means that I needed to talk to some real people who dealt with some of these real issues, because you know how it is. Sometimes we don't take the time to do that. You know, even when helping someone, we want to help everybody without listening to what it is that they actually need. So how could I do such presentation and not hear the voice of someone who lived during that time? So Mrs. Hicks started talking to me, and she was so free with her information. She said to me, and I want you to think of PTSD while I'm telling you this story. She said to me, when I would stand in line in a department store when I was young, she said if a white person came up to pay for their merchandise, I would have to step back. Even with my money in hand, I would have to step back and let them go first. She said, even now, today, when my grandchildren say they want to go through the drive-thru, she said, I'm not doing that. Why, Grandma? Because when I was young, the white folks could go inside the restaurant and eat. I had to go around the back to a hole in the wall, and they would just give me my food there. She said that whenever she would ride the bus, even to Henderson, North Carolina, she said that this bus, she would have to go up top, even if there were seats available on the bottom. Mrs. Hicks is still with us, still walking the earth. She said to me, there are people who want, you know, this idea of, oh, just move past it. But PTSD, you don't tell the service members in the military to just move past it. We have certain counselors set up for them. These traumatic events, we don't tell rape victims to just get over it. That was just something that happened, just get over. No, we have programs set up for them. But black people who have dealt with such trauma, many times you don't even want to talk about it. That's why I commend you for being here on today, because some people would never show up for such, whether they're black or white, because you have some black people saying, oh, it's been a long time ago, let's just get past it. I don't have to live that way. You have some white people saying, well, I wasn't here then, my ancestors may have did it, but I don't have anything to do with that. But you're here. And everybody else in between, they don't probably know what to say, right? So you should commend yourself for even being here among Americans who suffer from a PTSD that we don't even talk about. Slavery in America did a work on our minds. It did a work on the black mind. It did a work on the white mind. It did a work on the collective mind of Western society. Yet, we don't talk about it because we don't know how. That's why I've told you today, use your voice. Raise your hand. Say what you need to say. Get it out. Because if we don't do that, there can be no reconciliation. Everybody's talking about reconciling and coming together. And I know that's what King talked about as well. But how do we get here? if a husband and wife breaks up and then they think about getting back together, they have a candid conversation about why they broke up in the first place. So PTSD is real. Read about these things. Read about Dorothy Counts. Right here in North Carolina. She was 15 years old. All she wanted to do was go to school. She entered a school right there in Charlotte, North Carolina, right in our state. She was one of the first black students admitted to the school, but after only 4 days, she had to leave that school because she was harassed, she was threatened, she was spat on, she was cursed, she was mocked. Dr. King was 28 years old at the time. Dorothy Counts was 15. Facing all of that. This woman is still alive. And so I read that now, even one of the white students that taunted her, he found her and came back and apologized for his behavior. Isn't that interesting? These people are still alive. Not everybody's gone. And not everybody's dying. Oh. Read and watch. And when you see certain images, be honest about what it is that you feel. Social torment is what black people in America have faced. Social agony is what black people in America have faced. These are the images that Dr. King would have seen. Social terror is what black people in America have faced. It's been a collective trauma because even these white boys in this picture holding up signs that say we won't go to school with Negroes and strike against integration and we pupils of this school, we don't want Negroes in our school. A collective trauma because somebody's making you think that you're better than somebody else because of the color of your skin. That's traumatic for you. If somebody told you that you were better than somebody else because of the color of your skin. Because now what you have to do is you're going to have to reverse that type of thinking. There's a supremacy that was placed in your head because of the color of your skin. So you're going to have to work really hard to not clutch your purse because, oh, there's a black boy. You're going to have to work really hard because somebody put that in your mind. Black people, you're going to have to work really hard because you've been taught that there's something wrong with kinky hair. You've been taught that if your hair is not straight, then something's wrong with it. You've been taught that the spread of your nose is wrong and the fullness of your lips is wrong. It used to be that because your behind was big, that was bad until white people started to do it, and then it was okay. Messed up minds. I told you it's a collective trauma. It's not, you see, this spirit of hate, wanting you to hate yourself and hate other people, this spirit of unrest, it's a spirit. It's not a person, it's a spirit. And it doesn't care which color your skin is. It wants to ultimately destroy you and everything attached to you. You have greatness inside of you. But if you just focus on some type of supremacy, or you focus on some type of love for only one type of person, there's going to be a problem. A collective trauma. We have been traumatized in America. So then, what do we do about it? You know, all this talk. You know, every year there's a King Day, right? Every year there's a, Black History Month. Let's talk about those black people again and their contributions, right? Or, I mean, you know. But what do we actually do? Today you're doing something because you're here. Unfortunately, there'll be a lot of people who will never sit in the seat that you're sitting in now. And then even when they sit, they won't say anything because they're too afraid or ashamed. I have a friend, Justin, white guy from Florida. And when we were serving together as chaplains, we had some real conversations because I'm sure by now you can see that I have real conversations. I don't believe in just this talk that we do at the dinner table. This is the dinner table. And we are brothers and sisters. So, Justin is white. He didn't have kids a few years ago, but he has kids now. Well, before then, we were chaplains together, and I was talking to him quite like I'm talking to you now. I would tell him many stories, and we would meet, patients. We were chaplains, and we would meet patients from all walks of life. You know, when you serve different communities, it broadens your perspective on a lot of things. We were at round table at one point, and Justin said to me, he said, I've discovered that my great-great-grandfather, great-great-great, I don't know how many greats was in there, but he said that they owned slaves in Florida. So all of a sudden, he started to cry, and he was like, because we really get along, he's a great guy. And he held his head down. So this was white guilt. That's what you call it, white guilt. So he held his head down, he was crying, and I knew that he was sincere. I just believed it, that he was sincere. He wasn't putting on. So this white guilt had overshadowed him that day. And so he held his head down, and he shook his head, and he said, I just don't know what to do. And I told him this. I said, well, I don't speak for all of Black America. And I'm not doing that now. I'm not speaking for every Black person you've ever seen walking around. I did tell him this, though. He said, well, what can I do? What can I do? I said, Justin, when you and your wife have children, I want you to be deliberate about who their friends are. When you have kids, take them around people that don't look like them. Let them play together. Let them have sleepovers. That's what you do. You be intentional. And he looked at me and he said, okay. Now he has 3 kids and they moved to Florida. I don't know if he's done that. But we have to decide if we're going to do something after we sit in spaces like these. Or are we just going to do this because, hey, Dr. King, there's a street farm, in every little town or whatever in America. He said we have before us the glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our civilization. We have an opportunity. This is an opportunity. But how many people know that an injection can hurt? I never had one that felt good. Have you? I was like, man, Dr. King, that's pretty deep right there. We have a glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our society. So it's going to be painful. It's going to mean somebody, like some of you out here, and definitely me, standing up and saying what needs to be said. Why? For love's sake. It's going to be painful. But we can do it if we're honest about this thing. We have a glorious opportunity, especially in 2020. We have Facebook and Instagram. Wow. We can really get the word out about what love really looks like and what love really does. And so now, this presentation is called, What? Living the Dream, Facing the Challenge. Are you ready to face the challenge? You are, because you're here. So it's time to face the challenge. Challenge number 1. Love yourself. Do you know there are people walking around who really don't love themselves? That sounds so simple. But the fact is, if I don't love myself, then the question will be, what's going to happen to me when you find out who you are? So you see, I need to degrade you and make you feel less than in order for me to feel like somebody. I really don't love myself. But I can't inspire love within you. You can't love yourself. So I need to love myself. And then it'll be very difficult for me to hate other people, right? Because I love me, right? So in order to do that, though, you have to love yourself. You have to know yourself and be honest with you. That's why I've been talking about that the entire time. Be honest with you. Not the person sitting beside you, but with yourself. What are my prejudices? What are those things that I was taught that I need to reteach myself? Because that was just downright wrong. I was taught by watching media that a person, my skin tone, you could be black, but not black, like me, like dark. I'm black. Right? And so I was taught that I needed to go get fade cream to make my skin whiter, and that's what I did. Because I needed to be lighter. I have a cousin that's lighter than I am, right? So the lighter you are, the better life you'll have. And you know, there's some truth to that because, you know, some of us experience being followed in stores because we have black skin. You know, some of us experience this, you know, what are you doing on this side of town? My brother experienced that not long ago. I mean, I live here, you know. So, you know, driving while black, you know, in restaurant while black, having a picnic while black, anything while black, you know, just after, it's like, ooh. So then the black people have to teach their children and talk to their children about how to respond when these things happen, because something's going to happen while you're black, you know. When I was working at the bank, in particular, I'll tell you this story. Here in Raleigh, I was a bank teller. I had just finished my PhD. There was 3 of us there, black, and then there was a white woman there as well, Christina, sweet woman. Okay, so somebody upstairs, white woman, discovered that one of us graduated recently with a PhD. So she comes downstairs. Now, all of us are there on the front line. There's 2 black women, I'm one of them, and a black girl here, and then there's Christina, the white girl. So the white woman comes down, and she goes straight to Christina and says, congratulations. And Christina says, for what? She said, I heard that you graduated with your PhD. I had just had a conversation with Christina days before that. And I said to her, and the other girls, you know, they supported what I was saying. I said, Christina, I told her this exact thing. I said, let me tell you how our experience in America is. I said, and I said these very words. If anyone in here knew that one of us had a PhD, they believed it was you. She said, no, that's not true. I said, let me tell you something. I'm telling you, no, that's not true. And surely to goodness, a few weeks later, that happened. So the woman comes down, says that to Christina. Christina looks at me with a red face. And all I did was shook my head at her, you know. And so she looks at the woman and she says, no, I'm not the one who earned the PhD. That was Telika. So there are all these stories that I can tell you, and I want to tell you because, you know, if you don't come over to this side of the world, then you never get to hear about those stories. But it's a reality that many black people, I won't say all because I told you I'm not speaking for all black people, but it's a reality that many of us, me, experiences on a daily basis. So when I'm talking about love yourself, I have to tell myself every day that I'm somebody. I have to tell myself every day that I'm beautiful. I have to tell myself every day that I am fearfully and wonderfully made by God. I have to tell myself that all the time. And not only do I have to tell myself, but I have to tell little black boys and girls. That's why I'm so grateful that I'm a youth pastor. Because in the minds of these children, even in 2020, some of them still believe that if it's not white, it's not right. So be honest with you, know yourself, love yourself, and don't relinquish control of your thinking. Even as I'm standing here talking to you now, you don't have to accept everything I'm saying. Don't relinquish control of your own thinking. Because you see, the problem is if I stand here and I say things, even if it's true, if you don't think and accept it for yourself in order for it to be part of how you live your life, it's not going to matter. So you need to think for yourself. You need to evaluate the things that I'm saying. And you need to ask yourself, does that apply to me? Does it make any sense? You need to go back and put things in your own mind about the history of America. And then when Black History Month comes around, don't just think it's Black history, it's American history. Think for yourself. And don't allow others to define you or your potential. And then don't forget to celebrate yourself. Now, this is an issue that I have many times in the black community. Because black folks, many times, they'll, you know, say things like, well, you know, they may, I don't know, finish school or get some type of a promotion, you know, and they're so, you know, for humility's sake, you know, don't want to celebrate themselves. Well, you know, and sometimes a person can have so much humility that God can't even get the glory out of their life, right? So celebrate yourself. Celebrate what you've done. You matter. And the more you celebrate yourself, you won't find trouble in celebrating other people. But you have to learn how to start with you. because you matter. So that's the first challenge. Are you going to love yourself? You have to choose, right? The second challenge, be intentional. We have to ask ourselves, how do I support diverse groups? You know, we can have this idea of brotherhood and sisterhood, but brotherhood and sisterhood is something that has to be lived out, not just something to say. If you're my sister or you're my brother, how am I supporting you? How am I really doing that? In what ways, right? Do you, for example, go to the other side of town to support a business over there? That's a good example. Yeah. Yeah. What types of relationships do your children and grandchildren have with diversity? Remember when I mentioned my friend Justin? I'm saying the same thing to you. Who comes to the sleepovers for your children and your grandchildren? Who do your children eat with? Who do you go to lunch with? And I'm not talking about situational relationships. You both work at William Peach University, so you go to lunch together. That's not intentional. That's situational. When you think about baby dolls, for example, I remember when I was a kid, for a long time, I believe, my baby dolls were white. Because my parents or whoever, my aunt, wasn't being intentional about diversity, right? And it's a sad commentary not to expose the people you love to diversity. And I'm not talking about just a word, you know, diversity, inclusion, we like to say those things, but the action means that I take my child over here, you know, to this neighborhood or to, and I'm not talking about putting people in harm's way, that's not what I'm talking about. Again, let me go back to the William Peach University. You eat together because you go to the same school. What about when this is over? What about when you graduate? What real diverse relationships are you making now? And for the older people in here, it's not too late for you. I mean, what are the real relationships that you have with diversity? People, places, and things that are different than you. So that's what being intentional looks like. It takes work. This takes work. You have to do something. It can't just be something, just an idea. And then the third challenge is continually educate yourself. Continually educate yourself. So the question is, where do you feel comfortable discussing and learning about difficult topics? Where do you feel comfortable discussing and learning about difficult topics? Where do we do that? Where do we do that? And what material or courses for the professors in here, what material and courses are uncomfortable for you to teach? I mean, I'm comfortable now because I've been doing this for a long time. But I can tell you when you first start to do it, you know, it can be a little, you know, because when you start talking about truth, you will be, you know, labeled as, I don't know, racist, a hater, you know, whatever. You know, so when you really start talking about race and things like that and all the isms, I mean, you really do put yourself out there. But I promise you, if you go ahead and start, it gets easier. Because the fact is, most people appreciate truth. Even the truth that kind of, you know, offends them a little bit. You need to be offended sometimes. You need to be shook up sometimes. All this comfortable, oh, we are the world, we are the children. No. Not when you have to face these isms, racism, classism, sexism. We ain't no world and ain't no children. Because we're, let's be honest about this thing. Yeah. Okay? So, for the teachers in here, what material and courses are uncomfortable for you to teach? What I love about William Peach University is that you're even doing this now. This is a step in the right direction. Now, if you continue to do this, by this time next year, and the following year, and the following year, you'll be able to raise your hand, because nobody's done it yet, to answer the question of what William Peach University students, staff, and faculty are doing deliberately and being intentional. You should be able to say something. You should be able to say something. So what I'm saying is, it's wonderful that you're here now, so that things can be even instituted all the more. I'm saying all the more because I'm standing here, so you're already doing something. So all the more, so that you can grow together as a group of people who really are loved. Because education is a good thing, but education includes intellect and character. Dr. King said that is the goal of education, is intellect and character. So the character part means stuff like this on a regular basis, right? The character part. So if everything you teach is comfortable, that's a problem. You're not preparing your students to face a real world that is really diverse that they're going to have to operate in. You're cushioning them. Just like parents, what do they call them? Helicopter parents or whatever. I think that's a term, right? Oh, that's what you, okay, so you all use, okay. Don't do that to your students. Prepare them to face the world without you, because once they get out of here, that's what they have to do. And for the ones coming in, they need you to be honest with them in truth. And I'm not talking about just book stuff. But what if, do they feel comfortable discussing and learning about difficult topics in your classroom? That's the question. Maybe they do. Why don't you ask them? Challenge number 4. Take action. So, the questions are, what acts of justice can I produce in the world? First, you have to see injustice. And that's why I'm here, to take the blinders off. Yeah. And if you see it, but you don't put a name to it, it's okay. Go ahead. See it and put a name to it. Because if you are a loving person, not everyone is like you. So that means you're going to have to take some of this information and other things that you've read and experiences, you're going to need to take it to your dinner table. I'm not going to be at your white dinner table. What's the conversation? It's okay to bring me in there. Let me tell you what that black girl said over there. It's all right. I'm not going to be at your black dinner table. Just because we're black does not mean we know each other. Let me tell you something too. When I was a chaplain, that's one of the things that challenged me, and I'm so glad. I enjoyed it so much so because I think sometimes we think that because we have the same color skin, we're like exactly alike, and that's just not true. It's not true for, you know, black, brown, red, white, you know, any people, yellow, whatever you want to call it, whatever. We're just not. So it behooves us to slow down and get to learn one another for who we really are. And that's what I loved about my chaplaincy experience. So again, you have to take this information back to your community, right? Talk about it. They may not like it at first, but before long, people will sit and they'll say, I never thought about it like that. Some people will reject you, but life is about rejection. Have you ever gotten every job you applied for? I hadn't. Did you get every date, gentlemen, that you asked her for? You asked her out, but she didn't say yes. Or the women, you asked somebody out, but they didn't say yes. Rejection is a part of life. We have to grow thick skin if we're going to take action. What acts of justice can I produce in the world? I can start with my world. What acts of justice? When you hear people in your family make negative comments about the other, and when I say the other, it could be, I mean, whoever, whatever. It could be a race thing, a class thing, whatever, sex thing, whatever it is. When you hear, when they say those things, what do you say? What do you say? You can produce an act of justice in your own community when they say the things that they say. No, everybody, you're talking about them or whatever, they're not all like that. You can just say that. Say something. Currently, how are you helping to make the human experience a better experience? How are you helping the human experience to be a better experience? Where do you serve? I love how this school, this university, you had a day of service on yesterday, right? That's awesome. That's how you serve. You can answer that question, right? Yeah. You can answer some of these. Because people like you who show up for things like this, you get it. And the parts you don't get, I hope I'm giving it to you. And if you don't have it after you leave, I hope you will go retrieve it. But people like you who show up for things like this, you get it. That's why you're here. You serve somewhere. You're here after hours. How do you make a difference for people who don't look, live, worship, believe, and or think like you? How do you make a difference for those persons? So those are the 4 challenges. So the first one was, just to review, love yourself. The second challenge was, be intentional. The third challenge was, continually educate yourself. And the 4th challenge was, take action. Dr. King was a man who saw a social problem, developed a dream, and eventually by taking action, he changed the United States as well as the world. He is still today among the most well-known social activists in the world. So for the young people in here, you're a student. Dr. King saw a social problem. Young people, what social problem do you see? What social problem do you see in 2020? Because some of us, since we're not students and we're not your age, we've been there, but we're not your age in 2020. So that means we can't even conceive of the things that you see. What is it that you see? Whoever asks you what you see? Do they ask you in your classrooms? Do they ask you in your churches? Do they ask you at the family reunion? Who asks you what social problems you see? Because the fact is, some of us are older and we can still do some things. But you, Dr. King was 39 when he was assassinated. If everyone in here knew, and some of us may be over 39, but I want you to think about it. What if you only had 39 years? What if your life stopped at 39? For the younger people in here, however old you are now, I want you to fast forward. How many more years would you have? How many more years would you have? Maybe what, 16, 20? Yeah. Some of the younger people, if you live to be 39 and 39 alone, you don't have that much time, so you better get busy. Get busy on your campus. Whenever your professors inspire things in you and faculty inspire things in you, don't just do it to get a grade. Think about how it's building who you are as a person. What if you only have 39 years? For the older people in here, you've been blessed for more than 39 years. What did you do with the first 39 years of your life? If we all live another 39 years, let's say everyone in here, God grants you 39 more years. What are you going to do with your 39 years? You don't come to anything like this just to sit here and listen to me. You have to take action. What if we only have 39 years? Young people, what if your life ends at 39? So he saw a social problem and he developed a dream. But the good thing about Dr. King, although we always say he was a dreamer, he was a dreamer, he was a dreamer, but he was wide awake. He saw all those images that I just told you. Lived all those images that I just showed you. His house was bombed. There were crosses burned in front of his home. His family was under attack. And this man still moved forward. Even he died. He was assassinated, right? So what more can we do? Hopefully, we can dedicate ourselves to breaking mental chains. In 2020, we have psychological chains that need to be broken. And so we have to ask ourselves, when will we start the process of breaking mental chains? Remember when I told you that some people in here were taught, whether it was directly or indirectly, that you're better because of the color of your skin? Remember when I told you that some people in here were taught, whether directly or indirectly, like me with those little white baby dolls, that white is right and things about me and my features were wrong, even from seeing things on television and in magazines? Remember when I told you that? Those are called mental chains. And so together we can break free of them and realize Dr. King's dream. So in 2020, you have to say to yourself, hey, I can have a dream too, but I'm wide awake. I'm conscious. So that means that I can do something. And so one of the things that I wrote in my book that was mentioned in the bio is, I talk in this book is entitled That Day. Enjoy the one you have, improve the one to come. Because I don't know about you, but some days can be challenging. So I'm trying to enjoy the one I have, and I want to improve the one to come. But that takes work, right? And so in this book, I wrote about yesterday. As we have sat here this afternoon thinking about Dr. King, we've talked a lot about yesterday. But yesterday will never be seen again. Things that happened yesterday matter. I believe it can be hazardous to move forward through life unappreciative of moments that got you where you are now. I think well-lived yesterdays pave the way to the best tomorrows. The problem is when we allow our yesterdays to hinder energy that overshadows our todays. Yesterday, as good as it may have been, is gone. Moreover, yesterday, as bad as it may have been, is gone. It will never be seen or lived again. Be sure to move forward beyond yesterday so you can use what you've learned from the past to make brighter days. Yesterday was good for what it was good for. Use what it brought to your life and don't allow it to steal what today wants to give. So today, I wanted to give us insight into the life of Dr. King. And I think it's important to do that. I just hope that you will take time to have insight into your own life. Because if you can't conquer your own mind and actions, you can't make a difference in the world as it is. So now, if you have any questions or comments, this presentation was about living the dream, facing the challenge. So the last challenge is for you to use your voice. So maybe something made you upset. That's all right. Maybe something made you sad. That's all right. Maybe something inspired you. That's all right. Maybe something empowered you. That's all right. I hope it did something. So then I want to just open the floor so that if you have a question for me, if you have a comment, if you have a story or something that you want to share, then please feel free. Raise your hand and use your voice. Yes, ma'am. Your microphone is coming to you, okay?
First of all, I just want to say thank you for being here. It was absolutely inspiring, but I just have more of a comment. I really appreciated when you said that even though we may look the same, doesn't mean like know each other or things like that. Because I was actually raised from people who were not born in this country, who were not really taught, the history of slavery in this country. So I see it a little bit different. But now I feel like I do need to correct some of the things they say at the dinner table, things like that. I won't go into detail, but it was just inspiring because it's almost like living two different lives in the house and outside the house. So I just really appreciate it. I didn't want to say that I was inspired. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Wow. Anyone else? Use your voice. It's okay.
I was going to say I appreciate you talking about how, Black problems are never discussed because Black health isn't really cared about. So when I hear things like, it happened so long ago, it buries me because my grandmother is 83. So she tells me that she remembers her great-grandfather was a slave. And she tells me the stories of how his life was. And she was a sharecropper. She went through Jim Crow. She had to live through all that. And she had a son that is old enough that when he was a child, he experienced Jim Crow. To the fact that she moved to New York. She got her family out of there. She had to because she wanted to fight, but she couldn't because she knew her family was on the line. And she was a little older, so she said she had to, leave that for people who are just a little younger than she is. So when I hear things like slavery happened a long time ago, it irritates me because they don't realize like the tragedy didn't happen. It did not happen that long ago. Like my family owns the land that they used to be slaves on. Like the fact that I know for a fact that I stand on grounds where my ancestor used to work on. That's like when I found that out, I cried. Like it hurt, like to know, because now I always felt like a presence when I went in that lot. I was like, it always feels spiritually or feels weird. And they're like, oh, we used to work this land. I said, what do you mean we used to work this land? It was like, all these acres, we own this. We used to work here. We bought it back after we shared crops, and it took us some years to it took our family some years to bring it back, but they brought it back, and that's inspirational to me, because it's just like, that is the Black Caucus. If we just put our minds together and just realize how productive we are, then we could have change. We're the most productive generation. Our generation doesn't realize that, but we are literally 80% more productive than anybody like 20 years ago. Like, it happened that quick. And I just want people to realize that it's not about me, it's about us. And we can't fix things unless we get uncomfortable, because you can't change things if you're comfortable. That's the fact. You have to get uncomfortable in order to have that conversation. What takes us to having that power is that moment of uncomfortability, that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to cry, like it's okay to have all these things. Because once you recognize that, that's you recognizing everyone's perspective. You can't change your perspective unless you are open to others.
Thank you. Wow.
What would you say to somebody who seems like resistant to change or resistant to like the positive you're trying to put in life? So like I have people in my family who just said things that have made me upset, and I've spoken up about it, but they basically shut me down and make it seem as if my words don't mean as much. So how would you go about like helping them change?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say to you is that, and I know you know this, but I need to say it, we cannot change anyone. We absolutely cannot. No matter how much I talk about the symbolism, for example, of this Confederate flag, they're going to keep that flag on I-95. And every time I do something like this and I drive from Fayetteville back to Raleigh, I'm going to have to look to my left and see that flag and just, and I know what some people say, well, you shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't say, well, that's just the way it is. Some people are simply not going to change because that's not what they want to do. And so I would submit to you that you keep that same energy and you don't let them extinguish your fire. What you do is you keep your fire. You allow that rejection to push you into other spaces, because your voice is going to be needed even there. Because I'll tell you, even when Dr. King picked up this Bible, he would have read how Jesus said to the disciples, if they don't accept the message, then I need you to kick the dust off your feet. And I need you to go to the next town because somebody else needs to hear it. So what I'm saying to you is I do things like this all the time. And everybody doesn't accept it. Some people don't even show up. But the voice, you have to keep your voice going and keep the fire going. And take it to other communities because somebody needs you. And sometimes your own family won't accept it. That's just a reality. So I just want to just encourage you to stay on the side of right. Because what you're going to do is you're going to link up with some people like in this room, and then you all are going to grow something together. And sometimes it just can't be your family. It's a hurtful thing, but everybody gets to choose. You either liberate your own mind or you don't. So Dr. King said, we will grow together in love or we'll perish as fools. And like I said, some people will, and it's hurtful when it's your family. It's hurtful when it's your family. Let me tell you this, my grandmother is gone now. And she used to say to me, I just don't like white people. And I couldn't understand it because I grew up in a place where my friends were white. Like everybody was white. So I was like, how do you not like white people? Like how can you say that? But then I realized that she grew up in a time where her mother had to take care of little white children. And so because her mother was something called a mammy, she wasn't there for her. So my grandmother felt like the white people took my mama away. So I don't like them. And so nothing I could say could change that type of experience that she had. So really we have to remember that the only thing great enough to change a human being is the creator of human beings. And some people don't even believe in that. So you don't even believe in God, you know, bigger than you. Then you may believe you are God. And if you think that, what can I do about it? So don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Take your voice somewhere else. If I was never invited back to the school, and I'm glad you did invite me again. But if I was never invited, if I never get a job full-time teaching what I'm teaching now, I'm still going to go because the message needs to be heard. And you have to do the same thing. Okay? That's what you do. You just do it. And you pray for them. Pray for them. Sometimes people change. They do. So just keep hope alive and keep your spirit going, okay? We have time for,
I'll take one more.
one more.
Question or comment?
One more. Question or comment? Anybody else? Okay.
Well, with that, I would like to thank